Hello again to another Agakala Reacts. Today I'll be watching 7 times recasting iconic film characters actually worked from whatculture.com. Let's just get into it and let's just see.
You know what I think that a lot of fans would say when it comes to looking at iconic roles in cinema, there is one rule above all else that should be followed. Never, ever recast them. It's a perfect role. You can't do better, right? Well, these films beg to differ. As I'm Jules, this is whatculture.com, and these are 7 times recasting iconic characters actually worked. Number 7. Dumbledore. Originally played by Richard Harris and then by Michael Gambon. So when Harry Potter kicked off, the most likely recast was going to be with the young lads, right? I mean, child actors tend to grow faster than annual installments can be made, which had led Warner Brothers to originally suggest making J.K. Rowling's books into an animated franchise. Now, there have been various recasts throughout the gigantic film series. Lavender Brown got a new actress when she became a love interest, and Crabbe was pushed out of the events after his actor got sent to prison, but by far the most prolific has to be Albus Dumbledore. Richard Harris has played the kindly yet powerful headmaster of Hogwarts in the original 2 films, but when he died in 2002, the producers had no option but to get somebody else in. The replacement was Michael Gambon, who ended up giving us a much more Gandalf-esque mage, which given the increasing seriousness of the series was not a bad thing. At first, however, it appeared that the filmmakers had made a pretty big mistake, as some of his scenes in The Prisoner of Azkaban and Goblet of Fire are decidedly un-Dumbledore-y. For example, he really shouldn't have attacked Harry for his name coming out of the goblet, but thankfully, as things got more epic, he settled down into the role and became a legend. Number 6. George McFly, originally played by Crispin Glover and then by Jeffrey Weissman. So here's a character that even the original actor thought it would be impossible to recast, and actually led to a rather shocking result. Although everybody remembers Marty McFly and Doc Brown from Back to the Future, in the mind of Crispin Glover, who played Marty's father, George McFly, in both the 1955 and 1985 form, he was the real star. Because when a sequel to the time-traveling comedy was floated, Glover not only demanded that his salary was increased to the same level as Michael J. Bloody Fox, but also that he got approval on the script. Robert Zemeckis was not ready to give all of that up, so called Glover's bluff and ended up not bringing the actor onto the project. George was instead played by a heavily make-upped Jeffrey Weissman, with the role and story being much smaller than originally intended. And to be fair, it just about works. George doesn't really play a big part in the film, with his death in the alternate 1985 packing a real punch, and Weissman does look enough like Glover for it not to be obvious. Glover, however, was not impressed and sued Universal for using his likeness, a case that was settled out of court. Number 5. Kyle Reese. The original was played by Michael Biehn, and the recast was played by Anton Yelchin. So Kyle Reese is a man who travels back in time to chase after a girl he's only seen in one grubby Polaroid. And while that sounds obscenely creepy, it's actually the biggest of romantic gestures and one that leads to the saviour of the whole human race. Well, Michael Biehn made Kyle Reese, transforming what could have been a self-important soldier on a world-changing mission into a real man who had to deal with all of the struggles that you'd expect adjusting to a new timeline. It was a natural, down-to-earth performance that presented Reese as a regular guy, making him a suitable adversary for the stoic Terminator. There was no need to recast the character until the sequel or prequel or reboot that was Terminator Salvation, which had various characters from previous films in younger or older forms. Young versions of iconic performers are always going to be a tricky gamble, with most being lazily reverse engineered to deliver a simple shadow of what made audiences like the character in the first place. Thankfully, this wasn't the case with Kyle. Christian Bale wasn't overly suited to John Connor, who became a lot less interesting when he's actually in the robot war, but Anton Yelchin as Reese was spot on. Looking like a young Biehn, which is always a bonus, there was the same kindness present that had made the character so utterly likeable in the first place. Number 4. Slinky. The original was played by Jim Varney and the recast by Blake Clark. Now, I know what you're thinking. Was Slinky even recast? Well, that's the pure beauty of what Pixar did with the character in Toy Story 3. Replacing a voice actor is a lot trickier than it actually sounds. Although it would be easy to dismiss their performances as just a funny voice, it's a very distinct and purposeful funny voice. When Robin Williams refused to return to play the genie in Return of Jafar, Disney had to get in Dan Castellaneta, who was a brilliant voice actor who found acclaim with his work in The Simpsons, and even this brilliant voice actor couldn't quite do the Blue Lamp Dweller justice. Anyway, back to Toy Story. Jim Varney, who voiced the dog toy with an incredibly durable Slinky, died shortly after the release of Toy Story 2, which posed a problem for the late-in-the-day third film. Slinky was too large a character to simply write out, so the team set about recasting. They settled on comedian Blake Clark, who not only delivered a pitch-perfect voice for the character, but had also been a very good friend of Varney, making the whole recast feel rather respectful. Number 3. Spock. Originally played by Leonard Nimoy,
I
and
just
recast
watched
version by
Star
Zachary
Trek.
Quinto. So if you're a Star Trek fan, then Leonard Nimoy is Spock. He wrote a
And they
book
both
about
there.
it and everything. On top of playing him in all 3 seasons of the original series, Nimoy has become the half-Vulcan, half-human first officer of the Enterprise in the animated series, The Next Generation, multiple video games, and all of the original films. It's just one of those characters who's become so iconic because of the performance. And his take on Spock has become the embodiment of Star Trek in the eyes of the general public. And that's a shadow that you can't really imagine any other actor wanting to stand in. Therefore, you can imagine the unrest when it was announced that Star Trek XI was going to be a prequel, bringing a younger version of the Enterprise's crew. There were worries for all of the characters, but particularly Spock. I mean, who could do him justice? Well, the answer is Zachary Quinto, who did such a brilliant job of capturing Nimoy while also offering a greater sense of conflict that it felt in keeping with the skewed approach of Star Trek and its sequel Into Darkness. The real masterstroke, however, was using a sneaky bit of time travel to allow both versions of Spock to exist in the same reality. So now Quinto wasn't replacing Nimoy, but rather showing a new take on his iconic character. Smart. Number 2, The Joker. Everyone remembers Jack Nicholson, and the recast version was
Everyone
Heath Ledger.
remembers Heath Ledger now
Given
too.
how universally praised Heath Ledger's performance as the Joker was in the superhero crime epic drama The Dark Knight, it's hard to remember that when he was first cast as the clown prince of crime that there was a massive backlash. How could this actor do justice to this villain? But yet, as glimpses of his performance began to be released, people seemed to be less dismissive of Ledger. Although any praise was always uttered with a caveat. He won't be better than Jack Nicholson, though. Nicholson was a much more typical actor to fill the Joker's shoes, winning an Oscar for his ability to dip into psychosis. His take had been central to Tim Burton's Batman, with the Caped Crusader himself taking a back seat to Jack. And for a long old time, this was believed to be the definitive version of the Joker, with anyone else who dared to touch this destined for second best. Well, how wrong we were. Little more needs to be said about Ledger's performance, because if you're like me, you've watched The Dark Knight more times than is healthy. And while it's definitely not totally replaced Nicholson as an unstoppable
It's a different
stroke
type of
brilliance,
movie as well, in
definitely
my
is
opinion.
itself an ever-burning sun
It
of
is
a
very
performance.
good though.
And number 1, Hannibal Lecter, who was originally played by Anthony Hopkins and then by Mads Mikkelsen. Although Hannibal had already been seen on screen before, played by Brian Cox in Manhunter with the surname Lecter, it was Anthony Hopkins' performance as the part-time psychiatrist, part-time cannibal that proved so icon-making. Appearing as Lecter for a meager 16 minutes, Hopkins was so utterly unnerving on screen that Hannibal won him an Oscar for Best Actor. And remember, not supporting actor, Best Actor. And this has come to dominate his legacy. Things got a little hammy in Hannibal and Red Dragon, particularly the latter, which boasted a boosted screen time for Hannibal compared to the source novel, but even then it was still an actor having a lot of fun with a morally diverged character. But he was not immune from a recasting, which happened in the prequel Hannibal Rising, a generic horror film whose only link to the earlier movies was the title. And seeing as this was a bit of a stinker, it was always assumed that any new Hannibal would only exist in Hopkins' shadow. So expectations were middling to say the least for NBC's take on the psychopath pre-Lambs. Betraying its network TV origins, Hannibal is actually a cracking piece of brilliantly made television, elevated from a crime procedural by some luscious cinematography and an ever-developing plot. The cast is equally brilliant, with Mads Mikkelsen as Hannibal being particularly noteworthy. And here's the big whammy that we all have to face. He's probably better than Hopkins. Given much more time to present a nuanced performance of Lecter and play central to the plot, rather than being a bystander like in Silence of the Lambs or Red Dragon, Mikkelsen has matched and bettered the Oscar winner. And now I'm sure that there are people who would argue against that, but when you look at the amount of time that he's on screen and the amount of times that he doesn't falter during that time, god damn is that impressive. And there we go, my friends. Those were 7 times that recasting iconic characters actually worked. I hope that you enjoyed that, and please let me know what you thought about it down in the comments section below. As always, I've been Jules. You can go follow me over on Twitter at RetroJ with a 0, or you can swing by Live and Let's Dice. It's my personal gaming channel where I stream with my friends every single Wednesday and Sunday. But before I go, my friend, I just want to say one thing. I hope that you are well. I hope you're treating yourself with love and respect, because you goddamn well deserve it, my dude. You're a massive legend. Now go out there and absolutely smash it today. I believe in you. As always, I've been Jules. You have been awesome. Never forget that. I'll speak to you soon. Bye.
See you. Okay, what you think about us? Heath Ledger, really good as Joker. I haven't seen Hannibal the show, so I can't really say nothing. Anthony Elchin in the Terminator Salvation. I didn't even remember he was in it, so I can't really say much about it, although I do like that movie. Zachary Quinto as Spock, definitely very good choice. And the other ones, I'm not sure if I watched them. So, what's your take on that? Thank you very much for watching. See you tomorrow. Bye.